thing is really acting kooky. But it's more or less for the audio than anything. That may be all they get today, because this is just... okay. Come on, Satan. You're not getting your way today. Oh, there it is. Share screen. Okay, there we go.
There we go.
All right, Brenda. So I'm going to pass it off to you for opening prayer. I'm going to share my final message to my...
Let me finish this up.
Yep, go ahead.
I got a few more lines to type out here. Let me finish this up.
Yep, go ahead.
I was in shock when I found out. I was like, what the...
Yeah, I was too. That was totally unexpected. There we go. All right, now we got everything ready to go. So whenever Brenda's ready, we'll have her start the prayer, and I want to share my final message to my brother for the whole world to hear, because I'm not ashamed of. The only thing I'm ashamed of is I haven't talked to him since then, and that's unfortunate. But God's got a sense of humor.
Yeah, strange sense of humor.
And God already knows I'm mad at him, and it's okay though. I still love him. I'm still following him. It just right now I'm mad at the way he's doing things.
Well, he understands why you're angry, and he knows you don't really mean it towards him.
Well, I'm just mad because I don't understand what he's doing. I think what he's doing is stupid.
I was going to say messing with you.
But obviously he knows what he's doing. It's just, I just pray he made it. I really do. And that's in the Lord's hands, because there ain't nothing else I can do for him. All right, people that's watching this later on, just bear with us. Eventually, I'm thinking about trying to do Facebook Live with this again. I might try it again next week and see. Because I think if people know because we're already starting to make a habit of being on it too. So like I said, we'll let people know a week ahead of time, and if they want to watch it live, they can. If not, they can watch it later. Because we're obviously, believe it or not, we're getting views. Because on Facebook, I'll just go through the last one that we did and say how many views we got on the last one. My concert sneak peek got 54 views.
Wow.
Wow, that's totally unexpected. And I butchered it, but people like, what? I mean, I think it sounded good, but okay. 31 views on our last study. Well, you probably can't see it, but we got 31 views in our last Bible study on the study in holiness. Now, that was a subject study. It got 31. So our last one in Genesis 26 part 2 got 14 views. So that shows people like those subject studies that we do, along with, I almost want to say they like it more when it's a subject study. So I wonder maybe when I label the chapter, if I put some kind of a topic on it, that might get more views. I don't know, but it's not about getting the views; it's about reaching people. So.
Okay, now I'm ready for Johnny to open us up in prayer.
All right. So, dear Lord, thank you for gathering us here today to study your word, and please help us learn what you want us to learn and acknowledge, and help us understand what you want us to understand. Amen.
Okay. All right. So before we get started, I pulled up my last message. If I tear up, bear with me. This is what I'm talking about. God's got a I don't like using the word, but it almost seems like a sick sense of humor. August 12th. 4:26 a.m. was the last time I messaged my brother I'm sure he's seen it. Knows I love him. So here goes the message. And this is what the Lord laid on me when I woke up that morning. He laid this on my heart. I put, I know it's early and you are still sleeping. Just wanted to tell you I love you. And Jesus wanted me to tell you he loves you too. Sorry I don't talk to you hardly at all, but I do love you, and I want you to know, if we may not always agree most of the time, but just wanting you to know that even if I don't talk a lot, I do love you. And this was August 12th, a couple months ago. He was struggling with a lot of stuff. So it's probably part of why I didn't hear from him. I knew he loved me. And I watched his Facebook, I looked at his Facebook pages, and, you can see he was struggling with some stuff, but through a lot of it, he had a heart of gold, and it showed. And that's basically all I'm going to share. He's in the Lord's hands, and the Lord's going to do what's best, and I have to leave it at that. I don't understand now. I guess I understand now. I didn't then. What I don't understand is apparently that's the Lord's way of me telling my brother goodbye. But if that's the case, why didn't he do it, a week or a couple of days before his passing? Why did he do it 2 months before his passing? The only thing I'm hoping that maybe that message got through, because Mom said I guess he was talking to a chaplain, so I don't know. Maybe the message got through to him. I don't know. I have no way of knowing, and I won't know until I get to heaven if that message really got through or not.
Yeah.
I'm just praying you did.
Well, that's where faith comes in.
Oh. All right, I'll let you take over, Brenda. Yeah, that's just not an easy message to read, but I don't know why the Lord does what He does. Because then you'll get a kick out of this one, Brenda. And then you know what else the Lord told me to do during the grieving process? He goes,
What?
I go, I don't really have much hatred towards my dad. He just heard a lot of rumors. And the Lord had to open my eyes. He goes, you do have hatred deep down. Forgive him. Doesn't mean you have to hang out with him, but you need to forgive him. So, make a long story short, I forgave him through a letter. I allowed him to get back with me through a letter. I haven't heard anything back yet, but I did at least send him a message with tears going through my eyes as I was writing it, telling him that I forgive him. And I love him, but I don't want anything to do with him, if that makes any sense. But that's what the Lord told me to do. And I had to be obedient, and it was not easy. And then, you know what else the Lord told me? And this was the Lord's working, because I had no idea Mom was going to take it as well as she did. Then He wanted me to tell Mom the same thing, and I'm like, Lord, this is not a good time. And I started talking to Mom a little bit about it, but I told her, I said, this ain't the time. I'll wait and tell you later. Of course, I messed up, because I already started letting it hinting towards something. And she goes, what is it? I go, the Lord laid on my heart to forgive Dad, and He wants me to tell you to do the same thing. And I guess she already did, but she's on the same boat I am. Just because we forgive Him doesn't mean we need to love Him. But the thing is, she's getting a lot better right now. Now she's calling him F, which is an improvement. Because me and Mom, well, Mom really, but I followed suit, referred to him as jackass. And I told her, I said, now that we forgave him, we can't call him jackass anymore. So I still have to refer to him as Dad because he's the one that raised me. But doesn't mean I have to have anything to do with him. But I do have to love him. And I had to forgive him. And that wasn't easy. But it just goes to show what the Lord really does for us.
Yeah. Well, if God tells you to forgive him, He's going to help you to be able to do that. I don't believe God would ever tell us to do anything and not give us the tools to be able to do it.
But He doesn't make it easy, though. He definitely doesn't make it easy, that's for sure.
My opinion, but that's what I believe. I don't think God's going to tell us to do something, but not give us, the tools to be able to do it. Because he knows,
Mm.
like you said, that wasn't easy for you. He knows that, and he's going to help you.
Yeah. Here's the Lord's sixth sense of humor again. God doesn't do easy, and He's proven that to me over and over and over again. That God does not do easy. And I get it, but it doesn't make things any better.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I know that you said God's sick sense of humor because you didn't know what else to call it, but here's a word that I always say: God's got a weird sense of humor.
There we go. That does
God,
sound a lot better than sixth sense of humor. Because like when I told God I was
yeah.
mad, I wanted to tell God I was pissed at him, but I'm like I can't use the word pissed, but I can tell him I'm mad at him, and he knows I'm mad at him.
I
So
don't know why not. It is in the Bible,
yeah,
King James version anyway.
yeah, it
Right.
just seemed like a strong word, and like I said, I
Although,
still love him. I didn't hate him. I was just mad at him. I'm still a little mad at him.
although it means to urinate, not to be angry, but that word is in the Bible.
Okay, maybe it's a good thing I didn't use that word then. Although I guess technically I did because it was in my mind, but God understands.
Yeah, I don't remember where it's at, but I know it's talking about something about Saul, like an animal that pisseth against the wall.
Yeah.
That's what the King James version
All
says.
right. All right, let's go ahead and get this Bible study. Or if it takes you 2 weeks, it takes you 2 weeks. Ain't a big deal. I'm gonna run and grab me. I left my drink in my car real quick, so I'll be right back. But if you want, you can still go ahead and get started.
Well,
Ugh.
yeah, I'm not sure if we'll get through that 'cause I got 26 frames here, but I'll see how far I can get. Just kind of hate to see how Chris missed part of this. Although I don't think I'll be through this slide before he gets back.
No, I'm back.
Okay, because I thought I would do a little bit of a recap here. And this interesting information I got from the teacher's commentary book. I don't remember where I got it from, but it's kind of interesting. It said that Abraham lived between 2166 BC and 1991 BC. Isaac lived 2066 BC and 1886 BC. And Jacob lived 2006 BC to 1859 BC. Now, from the Bible dictionary, I got these things. Archaeological discoveries indicated that a father's deathbed blessing had the form of a will in patriarchal times. In other words, the blessing was as good as a will is today. And even though Isaac would live to be 180 years old at the time of this blessing, he thought his days were few. And I've got the verse where I got that in later on.
Okay.
And Isaac fathered Rebecca. Isaac fathered the twins. Rebecca bore their sons. God chose Jacob and rejected Esau even before they were born. God has the freedom to choose some as recipients and reject others. Now, right here, that's why I wanted to stop and ask you guys what you thought about about what God chose Jacob and rejected Esau before they was born, because I know some people believe in predestination. I just wanted you guys' take on that. Do you think that Jacob and Esau were predestined for these choices?
you know what? And we're going to find out later through the Bible. At least in this situation, I have to lead towards yes, just because of the way Scripture goes with this situation. Obviously, they have freedom of choice, and we're going to see that later. But actually, in a way, yes, because you're going to find out later that his father is going to try to. He's going to try to go the other way with us, but the Lord's will always happens, and Jacob still winds up with a blessing. Even though it was destined for Esau, Jacob still winds up with a blessing. Now, I know I'm giving you a little sneak peek ahead, but to study the Bible, and as I'm learning more and more, and especially with what Rob tells me, to really understand what you're reading, you almost really have to know what comes before it and what comes after it. And with you know what's coming after it when you read this, it makes a lot more sense. So, to your answer, I'd have to say yes. I would have to say this is predestined.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. That they were predestined for these, but I think even like Judas Iscariot, even though it looks like he may have been predestined to betray Jesus, and that he didn't have, and that was the way it's supposed to go. I think God also gave him freedom of choice to decide not to do it. But then that's where I get confused, because that kind of makes it kind of confusing, because if he's predestined to do it and God gives him free will, and he does, and but he just follows it anyway, it's like, where did the free will come from? Did he choose to do that, or did he just decide that this was what he was supposed to do, and he just went ahead and done it?
Now that you mention it, I want to bring something up that is going to really bring a debate. Maybe not between us, but definitely to anybody that watches. What about us? Would you also agree that maybe we're also predestined, that God chose us before we were born? Now, we could still leap out of his hands, but obviously, if we're destined to be God's children, then, and like I said, this is a strong debate, because I don't know if I necessarily believe in predestined, but the Bible kind of leads towards that. Yes, we're predestined, even though it doesn't make a lot of sense, because we still have the freedom of choice, which I like what Rob says. When you ask Rob, something about, are you going to go to heaven? And I like his answer. He goes, I don't know. And he uses a phrase a lot that, we have salvation. Nobody can take us out of God's hands, but we can jump out of God's hands.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Nobody can take us out of God's hands, but we can definitely not take ourselves away from his hands.
But that makes me wonder if we're predestined. But I guess, but if we're predestined, I guess he has it in our hearts that we're going to want to follow him, even though we're going to fail, which comes with the, freedom of choice. But naturally, the end result is we're going to follow him, and we're still going to be his children, and we're still going to make it to heaven. That part of predestined I like, but the part that I don't like is a freedom of choice, that we can choose to mess up, and that we can still jump out of his hands. But that'll open a whole debate. We're not trying to go there, because we can be there for quite a while on that one. Blackie, can you be quiet? We don't need this. You need to stop. See, she's a good girl. She does listen every once in a while. Good.
Okay. all you have to say then?
Yeah.
Okay. To continue, Jacob already obtained the birthright from Esau. He had to get his father to validate the birthright, which meant give him the blessing. To do this, Jacob would have to get it through deception. And that kind of involved his mother. His mother was also part of it. Some things to consider. Rebecca put him up to it. He earnestly desired the birthright, which is commendable, but he obtained it under questionable means, which is deception. He deceived Isaac because Isaac was blind, he couldn't see, so he deceived him into believing he was Esau, which that right there I'm still not sure about. I mean, if he knew that the voice was Jacob, why did he believe his other senses and not his hearing senses?
Yeah, that makes me wonder because he questions multiple times. So in his mind, he that doubt was always there, and obviously he gets confirmed later when Esau does come in. His doubt gets confirmed, but yeah, why he didn't listen to the doubt after doubt after doubt after doubt.
Yeah.
But don't we do the same thing?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. We kind of do the same thing. Even though we doubt something, we still go ahead.
I don't know what's going on. Chris, I have to go, bro. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I have to go to a party.
Okay.
I'm sorry, but I can't finish this Bible study. I have to go.
All right. You want to? Okay.
So just continue going, and I'll come back next week.
Okay.
Just
It'll be all right. It'll be on YouTube for you. So.
All right.
All right. We'll go ahead and continue, and you can watch it later. I'll get it put on there tonight.
All right. Bye.
All right. Bye.
Okay. So the birthright meant channel of God's wondrous promise of blessing to the whole world. Esau didn't care about it because at the time he was willing to trade his birthright for a little measly bowl of stew. Jacob paid for his fraud. Jacob wanted the birthright, and he deceived his brother. Or I don't know if it's so much deceived, but he did defraud his brother into giving up his birthright. But God laid the foundation of gigantic world plans, as it says in Romans 9:10 through 18. Not only that, but Rebecca's children were conceived at the same time by our father Isaac. This is Paul talking to the Romans. Yet before the twins were born or had done anything good or bad, in order that God's purpose in election might stand, not by works but by him who calls, she was told, the older will serve the younger. Just as it is written, Jacob loved, but Esau I hated. Jacob I loved, but Esau I hated. What then shall we say? Is God unjust? Not at all. For he says to Moses, I will have mercy on whom I have mercy, and I will have compassion on whom I have compassion. It does not therefore depend on human desire or effort, but on God's mercy. For Scripture says to Pharaoh, I raised you up for this very purpose, that I might display my power in you, and that my name might be proclaimed in all the earth. Therefore, God has mercy on whom he wants to have mercy, and he hardens whom he wants to harden. And that right there kind of lets you know why Rebecca was so willing to help Jacob receive the blessing, because it says right there that she that where did he say that? Yet before the twins were born or had done anything good or bad, in order that purpose of an election might stand. She not by works, but by him who calls. She was told the older will serve the younger. I don't know why I forgot that.
Mhm. Well, here's another interesting thing, and I'm sure you probably know this, that Jacob was Rebecca's favorite and Esau was Isaac's favorite.
Yeah, yeah.
And
And I
that
don't know
plays.
why I forgot that because in Genesis 25:23 it does say the Lord said to her, Rebecca, two nations are in your womb, and two peoples from within you will be separated. One people will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger. So in a way, it was maybe not so much that Rebecca was willing to deceive Isaac, but that she wanted to make sure that what God told her came to light. Although I don't understand why she would, since if God pre- predestined it, then it's going to happen.
Yeah.
But well, like you keep saying, you know, we we often do that too. We want something so bad, even though God may tell us this will happen to us. We kind of try to help make it come together. Um, Now Jacob's descendants did obtain a dominant position among the nation, also produced Christ through whom they are marching onward universal empire. Esau's descendants, the Edomites, were subversive and tolerated Israel. I think I left a word out. Were subversive to Israel. They and and tolerated them. They did throw off Israel's yoke in 2 Kings 8:20-27. They did separate from Israel, and I think that's why they have disappeared from history because the Edomites no longer exist.
Mm.
But that's just some of the little recap that I wanted to throw out there to see what you guys thought. And there we go. Now to go into chapter 27, 1 through 4. When Isaac was old and his eyes were so weak that he could no longer see, he called for Esau, his older son, and said to him, "My son." "Here I am," he answered. Isaac said, "I am now an old man and don't know the day of my death. Now then get your equipment, your quiver and bow, and go out to the open country to hunt some wild game for me. Prepare me the kind of tasty food I like and bring it to me to eat, so that I may give you my blessing before I die." Now see that right there tells us that Isaac didn't know how much longer he had to live.
Yeah.
And then okay, I did write down where I got from the New Application Commentary by John H. Walden, which is through the Bible Gateway thing. Said this narrative begins with Isaac's health in sufficiently fragile condition that he decides that the time has come to give his blessing. In reality, Isaac lives for many more years. He dies just 10 years before Jacob and his family moved to Egypt, more than a decade after Joseph is sold as a slave. Isaac puts his house in order by giving a blessing to Esau. Giving the blessing was a big deal. Isaac's request for a feast of his favorite meal is the equivalent to going out to a fancy restaurant today. And, okay, and then from Google, I Googled the definition of birthright and blessing. And according to Google, biblical birthright is the right which naturally belonged to the firstborn son. It included a double portion of the father's property and the dying father's most dynamic blessing. The firstborn blessing was a coveted honor in the Old Testament. The father of the firstborn would place his right hand on the head of the oldest son and confer the blessing, which was a double portion of all that he had, for he was the beginning of his strength.
Okay, that's confusing because to me that both sound pretty much almost exactly the same. Because that's what I was going to ask you, but it looks like you had the same thought as what was the difference between birthright and a blessing. I'm not, unless you can see it, I don't really see any difference except for the birthright was double portion of property.
Yeah. Well, see, that's what I didn't understand it either until up here in the Bible dictionary, where it said, okay, Jacob already obtained the birthright from Esau. Now he had to get his father to validate the birthright, which in this case would be the blessing.
Oh, okay.
So that's the way I understand it. The blessing was just a validation of the birthright. The firstborn already had that right to the birthright.
So that
Blessing.
leads okay. So that leads me to another question, and I don't know, and maybe neither one of us are going to know the answer. But like you said, if the blessing was just a confirmation, well, what if because obviously Isaac had the birthright, even though Esau didn't know that, but Isaac already had a birthright. What would happen if Esau did get that blessing but didn't have the birthright?
Um, yeah, somewhere I had I had an answer to that, but I'm not sure where it's at right now. I think,
It almost sounds like it was
but
voided out.
I think if Esau would have gotten the bless, if things had progressed like Isaac wanted and Esau took the blessing, he would have gotten it by ill-gotten gains, and it would have been, yeah, that's it. It would have become a curse to Esau, not a blessing.
Okay.
He wasn't supposed to have the blessing. It was supposed to go to Jacob.
That makes sense. So then by what you're saying, so if Isaac would have gotten the birthright and the blessing, it still would have turned out to be a curse because that's not the way God designed it.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. And that's another thing, just goes to show God knows what he's doing, and a weird sense of humor, he makes it happen. And we see a sense of humor in this too.
Yeah. Actually, I don't know where I put that, but I think I do have that because I read that in the blue thing. The letters in blue are from my Bible study fellowship notes, which we had done a study of this a couple of years ago, and I do believe it says something about if Esau would have taken the blessing, it would have been more of a curse because he wasn't supposed to have it. Because it was supposed to go to Jacob. Now, in the Bible Gateway commentary, it tells us that Isaac lived for many more years and in fact died 10 years before Jacob and his family moved to Egypt, which means he was alive at the time Joseph was sold into slavery. Since Isaac was in failing health, he really did not know that he would live too much longer. and he wanted to make sure to give the blessing to his oldest son before he did die. Now, and from the Bible Study Fellowship notes, Isaac sought to secure Esau as heir that day before he died. In Genesis 35:28, we see, that's it. I don't know why I was thinking that was Deuteronomy. I'm glad I didn't say anything. But in Genesis 35:28, we see that Isaac lived to be 180. So he had these decades to live with the consequences of his actions this day. Which, can you imagine what kind of burden that would have been, having to live that way? Because he was kind of deceiving too. Because usually the blessing is done like a ceremony, and he was trying to do it in secret so nobody knew.
Well, I like what David Guzik said, and it makes sense, and it shows in the Bible they were, if you look at all four, in a way, all four were deceiving. And Jacob, as you're going to find out later, why his name gets changed to Israel is because Jacob, basically the meaning, and you probably have this in your study, means deceiver or heel grabber. So naturally, Jacob's ashamed of his name because names back then, they weren't just names, they had meanings. And the meaning of the name Jacob wasn't good.
The name of Jacob meant deceiver, which is kind of interesting that he got that they gave him that name at birth. And it makes you wonder, did they secretly know that he would be deceiving his brother?
I don't know. I want to say no because I had no idea my brother was going to pass when I wrote that last letter, and now I realize that, it was a farewell letter, which I feel horrible about that, but I just did what the Lord told me to do. I just wish you would have told me sooner or later, I wish you would have told me that closer to his passing instead of a couple months prior to his passing.
Yeah. But then again, if they didn't know that he would be deceiving his brother, then why give him the name deceiver? That's kind of just one of those things where it just sends your head swimming as you try to figure that out. Isaac urgently sought to secure Esau as heir that day before he died. So we can see that Isaac thought he didn't have. Oh, I meant to put that in a different color because this is my own thinking. We can see that Isaac thought he didn't have long to live, and yet he died just 10 years before Jacob did.
Wow. So Jacob.
Huh?
I said I just keep thinking because if you look back in the Bible and Noah's time, which now I almost got to retract my original thought, when God said, something about he's tired of dealing with people living such a long life, that their lifespan will be 120. Well, Isaac and Jacob are still exceeding 120, and that's beyond Abraham's children's children. I think at this point, Abraham is their great-great-grandfather or something along that line?
Yeah.
And yet they're still living past 100, not far past, but they're still living past 120, which is still far less than I want to say 600 years that Noah lived. I think I think it was 600, something like that.
Yeah, well, see, Isaac is Jacob and Esau's father, so Abraham would be their grandfather.
Okay. I knew it was close. I just couldn't remember how many generations between them because I lose track of some of that stuff, but it's interesting and how we read something and it's still sort of true, but it's almost like, once again, his warped sense of humor, they're going to live 120, but he's a godly man, so I'm going to allow him to live to be 180. And then we're talking pre-death, the Lord's like, I can't wait to get to heaven and have all these answers because, it's just weird.
Yeah. And that raises another question because I have all these questions that I think I'm going to ask God when I get to heaven. I'm going to ask God and Jesus all these questions. And I keep thinking about what one of our ex-pastors from Sherman Street said. When we get to heaven, we'll be so overjoyed that we made it into heaven. And so seeing the glory of heaven, that we'll probably forget all about our questions.
Yeah. No, because I like what Pastor Cliff says is we'll already know, and we won't need to ask them because we'll already know, as it's been known or something like that, that we'll already know all the answers when we get there. And we're like, oh, that's why. And then we won't be
Yeah.
mad at God anymore because then we'll get the full picture. And unlike in earth, we get mad at God because we don't understand. And looking at it from a earthly perspective, it's stupid and ridiculous and makes absolutely no sense. So I guess God works the American way. If it makes sense, we'll go the opposite direction.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah, in order to keep us guessing. So in that culture and time, fathers blessed their heirs with a public celebration like Abraham did for Isaac. But Isaac privately called Esau to provide him a tasty meal of game. His favorite, which was because he was his favorite and Esau's specialty, as an occasion to receive his blessing. Isaac's motives and understanding aren't clear but are questionable. Now, from Vine's Expository Bible Dictionary, it says to bless, which is a verb, barak, which is, I think, the Hebrew word, to kneel, bless, be blessed, curse. The root of this word is found in other Semitic languages, which Semitic is Jewish origin, which, like Hebrew, use it most frequently with the deity as subject. There are also parallels to this word in Egyptian. Blessing as a noun, blessing was the opposite of a cursing. My father peradventure will feel me, and I shall seem to him as a deceiver, and I will bring a curse upon him and not a blessing, is what Jacob said in Genesis 27:12. The blessing might also be presented more concretely in the form of a gift. It is assumed that Isaac knew of God's prophecy regarding his choice of Jacob, not Esau. But Isaac ignored not only God's expressed will, but also the different attitudes of his two sons toward God's promises and commands. Since it doesn't really say, that's why I say it's assumed that Isaac knew, because because Rebecca knew that he would be a nation.
Well, here's a question: did they know, or is it because that was their favorite, so that's what they want? I think it might be a mixture of both. To be honest with you, between secretly knowing and also wanting their favorite to get it.
Yeah, I remember like in where Genesis 25. Remember what Genesis 25:23 said. The Lord said to her, Rebekah, two nations are in your womb, and two peoples from within you will be separated. One people will be stronger than the other, and the other will serve the younger.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that's why they must have known. Maybe they forgot or just chose to ignore it.
And since the Lord said it to Rebekah, I can't imagine Isaac not being there when he told Rebekah.
No blacks.
Isaac ignored not only God's expressed will, but also the different attitudes of his two sons towards God's promises and commands. Isaac decided to give Esau something God did not want him to have. Esau previously decided the birthright was more worthless to him than a bowl of stew when he was very hungry. But now he tried to get it back from Jacob through his father's scheme. Esau thought God's blessing could be sold, earned, or stolen. Esau's attitudes and actions indicated wrong thinking about God. Now, and this is my personal opinion in this, in a way, isn't that how we are today? We are so quick to give something away when we need something else of importance, only to be sorry for it later, and then scheme to try to take it back from whoever we gave it to. That's, so
I,
that's so that's my thought on that. What's yours?
yeah, I would have to agree with you on that. Yeah, we do that way too often.
Okay, Jacob steals Esau's blessing, which I was trying to find a suitable picture, but it seemed like all the pictures I was finding had Rebecca right there. And I don't think Rebecca was there when he gave the meal to Isaac.
Yeah, yeah, it's hard to say. Something tells me she might have been because his eyesight was bad. It's possible, but it's hard to say.
Yeah,
But I do like the picture you got though, because that it does fit exactly what the Bible showed, that the skin on the arms and and all that stuff.
yeah. And Isaac feeling his arms.
Yeah.
And it might be just that Isaac was so wanting Esau to get the blessing that he didn't really think too much about the voice after he felt the arms and the back of Jacob's neck.
Yeah.
Now, verse 5. Now Rebekah was listening as Isaac spoke to his son Esau. When Esau left for the open country to hunt game and bring it back, Rebekah said to her son Jacob, Look, I overheard your father say to your brother Esau, Bring me some game and prepare me some tasty food to eat, so that I may give you my blessing in the presence of the Lord before I die. Now, my son, listen carefully and do what I tell you. Go out to the flock and bring me 2 choice young goats, so I can prepare some tasty food for your father, just the way he likes it. Then take it to your father to eat, so that he may give you his blessing before he dies. Now, my thought on this, can it really be stealing the birthright if Esau sold it to Jacob for some stew a while back? And wasn't Isaac's private party with Esau just as deceptive as what Rebekah and Jacob did? Because Isaac wanted Esau to have the blessing just as much as Rebekah wanted Jacob to have. So to me, they're gonna both be they're both being deceivers. The giving of the birthright was supposed to be a big celebration, and yet Isaac tried to do it in secret. I wonder if Rebekah being sneaky or God's way of making sure Jacob. I wonder if it was Rebekah being sneaky or God's way of making sure Jacob secured the blessing. After all, God was the one who chose Jacob, not Esau, to lead his people and make him a nation. God will do anything to make sure that happens. That's my thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you because, obviously the Lord's will always be done. How it's done, it really, that's where the choice comes in, is how it's done. But
Yeah.
in the long story, his will always happens. Just like Jesus going to the cross. The Lord's will was for Jesus to go on the cross. Now, was it Jesus' will? No, because he asked the Lord to take the cup from him. But it was the Lord's will, so he still went willingly. But Jesus, even himself, even basically asked the Lord, please, don't do this. There's got to be another way. And I'm sure sweat and blood and tears were flowing down his eyes as he said that.
Yeah. And yet he said
The Lord's will be done, which is another reason why
yeah,
God doesn't
the
do
very,
easy.
the very 5 words that are always the hardest for anybody to say when they pray is not my will, but your will be done.
Yeah.
So, and Jesus understood that. And I think if we're to be an imitation of Christ, then we need to remember that too.
Yeah.
Not my will, but your will be done. Because your will, you know what's best for all of us.
Yeah.
Genesis 27:5-17. Jacob said to Rebekah his mother, "But my brother Esau is a hairy man, while I have smooth skin. What if my father touches me? I would appear to be tricking him and would bring down a curse on myself rather than a blessing." His mother said to him, "My son, let the curse fall on me. Just do what I say. Go and get them for me." So he went and got them and brought them to his mother, and she prepared some tasty food just the way his father liked it. Then Rebekah took the best clothes of Esau, her older son, which she had in the house, and put them on her younger son Jacob. She also covered his hands and the smooth part of his neck with the goat skins. Then she handed to her son Jacob the tasty food and the bread she had made. So it was really Rebekah, Isaac's wife, who deceived Esau so Jacob could receive the final blessing from Isaac. Rebekah must have known somehow that God had chosen Jacob to be the one to receive the blessing. She was trying hard to make sure Jacob received it. So there again, what we were saying, Rebekah must have known, Rebekah had to have known that he was supposed to get the blessing. And of course that goes back to 25:23, I guess, where God actually told her that there's 2 nations. She was even willing to let the curse fall on her and not Jacob. Now, when she heard Isaac speak to Esau about the blessing, she began to work. When Esau went out to hunt, she called Jacob and worked a plan. Rebekah knew that God's prophecy was for Jacob, not Esau, to have the blessing. Esau's marriages to 2 Hittite women caused her grief. She must have known that Esau sold his birthright to Jacob, her favorite. Rebekah looked for a way to fulfill God's plan and her desires in her own way rather than waiting on God. And so true of us today, because we are people that want things now when we desire them. We have a problem with waiting. This is why people get themselves in trouble with credit cards. It's easy to go purchase what they want with the card, but then mounting interest rates causes the amount they owe to go up faster than they can pay it down, all because we are a society of wanting things now and spending beyond our means. When God says, "Wait upon me," why is it so hard for us to wait on him? But I think, in a way, Rebekah's deception kind of caused, in a way, God kind of punished her for her deception, because she sent Jacob away and she would never see Jacob, her favorite, again. So that was kind of like punishment for her deception.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Rebekah plotted to deceive Isaac and led Jacob into sin against God and his father Isaac. Rebekah's plan was to have Jacob bring her 2 male goats, and then She set about fixing it exactly like Esau used to prepare meat, since she likely taught Esau how to cook as well as Jacob, and which was how Isaac liked it. Rebecca relied on sinful methods to seek the right thing. And so her son, her son having to, she had Isaac send Jacob away to protect him because she was afraid Esau would kill him as soon as Isaac passed away, but she never saw Jacob again, so that was kind of like her punishment for what she did. Obedience to God never requires compromise with sin. God is holy, and therefore God's people must be holy in their motives and actions. Jacob expressed fear of being caught and cursed, but didn't tell his mother it was wrong and not do it. Because she told Jacob to let the curse fall on her, it shows that she didn't weigh the consequences too well. None of the four people were afraid to sin in the presence of the Lord to get what they wanted. And that's kind of what I was thinking when I was reading it. They all four wanted, each one wanted something, and they weren't afraid to sin in God's presence to get it.
No, because Jacob even uses the Lord's name in his lie. When Esau asked him how to get it so fast, well, the Lord provided it for me. I'm like,
Yeah,
my God, if that ain't a bold statement, what is?
yeah, and and Isaac wanting Esau to have the blessing so bad that he wasn't willing to do the regular celebration of the blessing to Esau, but do it in private, thinking he could hide everything. But he forgot one thing: you can't hide anything from God. God knows all, sees all, hears all that goes on.
Yeah. How many times do we try to hide stuff from God? I'm
Yeah.
guilty of it. I ain't gonna lie, I'm guilty of it.
Oh, me too. I try to do things and thinking, oh, God's not going to see this. And he knows everything that we do because he's omnipotent. I think that's the right word.
Yeah.
Omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent.
Yeah.
And I can never keep the definition of all three of those straight, except for omnipotent. I know that he's everywhere. Or no, wait. Omnipresent means, okay, never mind. I just confuse myself if I keep going on.
Yeah, it seems like every time we try to hide something from God, not only does God know, but God reveals to us, like, you know how you try to hide that from me? Yeah, I'm bringing it out in the light.
Yeah. So Jacob expressed concern about his smooth skin. Rebecca told him to put on the best of Esau's clothes. Then she took the skins of the goats and placed them on Jacob's arms and the back of his neck to give the appearance of being Esau, when she undoubtedly knew Isaac would feel the arms and back to make sure it was Esau, since Isaac was blind. And also, since it was Esau's clothes, they would kind of like smell like Esau. Rebecca took advantage of his blindness, this foolishness of sinners who attempt to hide from God, who sees and knows all, did not fool God, even if it fooled Isaac. We look at this and we tend to blame Rebecca and Jacob for the deception of fooling Isaac, but how many times have we done the same thing in our lives? We tell little white lies to cover up what we did so that our family and friends don't find out. But we sometimes forget that God knows all, sees all, that we do, and nothing gets by him, even if we think we are hiding it from him. Wow. That, wow. Again, we discussed that before we ever got to that slide.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, 18 to 26. He went to his father and said, "My father." "Yes, my son," he answered. "Who is it?" Jacob said to his father, "I am Esau, your firstborn." Okay, yeah. "I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you told me. Please sit up and eat some of my game, so that you may give me your blessing." Isaac asked his son, "How did you find it so quickly, my son?" "The Lord your God gave me success," he replied. So right there, he
Mm-hmm.
put the blame. He curried God into his deception by telling him that God gave him his success. Then Isaac said to Jacob, "Come near so I can touch you, my son, to know whether you really are my son Esau or not." Jacob went close to his father Isaac, who touched him and said, "The voice is the voice of Jacob, but the hands are the hands of Esau." He did not recognize him, for his hands were hairy like those of his brother Esau. So he proceeded to bless him. "Are you really my son Esau?" he asked. "I am," he replied. Then he said, "My son, bring me some of your game to eat, so that I may give you my blessing." Jacob brought it to him, and he ate. And he brought some wine, and he drank. Then his father Isaac said to him, "Come here, my son, and kiss me." Now, when Jacob brought the dish to Isaac, Isaac recognized his voice as that of Jacob. Truth doesn't change, but lies must be maintained. Therefore, lies always require more lies to stay alive. And my personal opinion on that was, I have always said that to tell the truth is better than telling a lie, because when you tell the truth, you know you don't ever have to worry about being caught in a lie. When you're caught in a lie, you then must lie to cover up the lie, and the whole thing just keeps growing and growing. Because the more somebody lies, and then they have to lie to cover up the lie, that just snowballs into something we wish we'd never started. But that's
Mm-hmm.
my personal opinion. What do you think of that?
No, I have to agree with you. It's so much easier to tell the law, even if it gets us in trouble, because sometimes by being honest, that you'll get in less trouble than you will lying. Because that's one thing I try to bestow on my kids and my boss, especially when I call them out. I'm like, now look, if you're honest with me, I'll be a little bit lighter on you. Now, granted, there's still repercussions. Because, I had fighting on the bus the other day, and I told him, I said, that one's out of my hands. I'm like, that's an automatic day suspension. But one girl I told, I said, because you're honest, I said, I'm only going to mark you as standing up, and maybe not following, but I'm like, but I could sit here and put you as disrespectful. And I told her, I said, now if I wanted to, I said, I can automatically kick you guys off for a day off. But I choose to not do that. And I think a lot of my kids are starting to realize that, hey, if I'm honest to the bus driver, he's not going to be as hard on me as if I am if I lie to him. Because when he lied to me, like I
Yeah,
had one kid the other day, I flat out told him, I said, I hate liars. I hate people that lie. And of course, the next day when somebody else got in trouble, of course, that kid speaks up and goes, be honest, I learned the hard way, when you lie.
yeah. Now, Jacob lied to answer Isaac's question about his identity. He lied using information from his mother to cause his father to believe. He told another lie to explain how he got the meal so quick. This time he invoked God's name by giving God credit for a meal that he didn't even get. Isaac lied again after Isaac felt Jacob's covered skin and asked him if he really was Esau. Isaac was so deceived he ate of the meal and drank and called Jacob to come forward for the blessing. Isaac is planning to give the patriarchal blessing, which must be distinguished from the material inheritance birthright discussed at the end of Genesis 25.
Mm-hmm.
And the blessing has nothing to do with material goods or birth order. It is also important to distinguish the patriarchal blessing from the covenant blessing, though there may be areas of overlap. The covenant blessing is passed on to Jacob by Isaac in 28:3-4, but more important is confirmed by God in subsequent settings, which is 28:13-15. These pronouncements can be viewed from three different perspectives: social, theological, and social. There is no question that these pronouncements are taken with the utmost gravity by both father and son. They expect the pronouncements to impact the destiny of the son. The power of the pronouncement is vested in its being spoken. That is why Isaac cannot take it back after he learns that he has been tricked. And that was from the Vine's Expository Bible Dictionary. So, what is your take on what they say?
Don't really have anything in that one.
I can kind of understand what they mean by material inheritance, the birthright was, because Esau, being the oldest, was the one that was to get the birthright. But the blessing automatically goes to the one that, well, no, I guess I don't understand that, because the blessing also goes to the oldest.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just the birthright is kind of like a written. I just lost the word. Kind of like a promise to the oldest, but the blessing is what is actually given to the oldest to procure, to validate that birthright. Let's see what this says. Theologically, these pronouncements are not presented as prophetic messages from the Lord. They simply represent the hopes and wishes of a father for his sons. There is no intrinsic authority vested in the blessing. In this way, it is much like Joseph's dreams. God is not obliged to work them out from a canonical perspective. However, we must admit that their inclusion by the narrator indicates a sense that the pronouncement also enjoys God's seal of approval and that it turns out accurately to reflect the son's destiny. Whether we would say that the patriarch is blessed with divine insight in the making of the pronouncement or that God sees fit to honor the pronouncement is just semantics. G. Wyndham points out how unusual it is that only Esau is summoned for the blessing, the more normal circumstance being that all one's children are gathered for the occasion, as we are reminded of Abraham's practice of giving gifts to his children and sending them away in Genesis 21:11 and 14, 21:11 through 14, and 25:6. Singling out Esau opens up the possibility that Isaac is intending to send Esau away. though not with the purpose of elevating Jacob, as ruled out by the nature of the blessing Jacob thinks Isaac is bestowing on Esau. While admittedly no such exigency is referred to either by Isaac or the narrator, it makes some sense in the context of the grief Esau is causing his parents because of his marriages, and explains as being summoned individually. How ironic it would be if Rebecca and Jacob unwittingly interfere with the sequence that would have resulted in Esau's being sent away. Instead, it is Jacob who ends up being sent away. So, any thoughts on that?
No, not really.
Then 27 through 29. So he went to him and kissed him. When Isaac caught the smell of his clothes, he blessed him and said, "Ah, the smell of my son is like the smell of a field that the Lord has blessed. May God give you heaven's dew and earth's richness, and abundance of grain and new wine. May nations serve you and peoples bow down to you. Be Lord over your brothers, and may the sons of your mother bow down to you. May those who curse you be cursed, and those who bless you be blessed." Now God overruled all the plotting and scheming to accomplish his determined will. When Isaac spoke, God's prophecy filled his heart. Isaac believed he was speaking them to Esau. Isaac must have believed he had somehow convinced God to change his mind. God overruled Isaac's desires. God remained true to his word with his chosen blessing for the nation that would rise through Jacob. Fertile lands, the blessing includes suggestions of bountiful goodness, abundant provisions, joy, and peace. Ruling leadership, Jacob's son Joseph would rule from Egypt. Israel would rule over the Edomites, and ultimately Jesus is exalted to rule over all. Family headship. Isaac thought he made Esau lord over Jacob, but God accomplished his purpose. Identification. God would be so closely involved with Jacob that to curse or bless him would be as doing so to God. So any thoughts there?
The only thought I got there is it's ironic how Jacob thought he changed God's mind. In reality, God never changes his mind. Oh, I don't know if I want to word it that way, but when
Yeah.
God, I still almost want to say that because even a few spots where it seemed like God changed his mind, I think God always knew what the outcome was going to be, even when he did. And I can't think of any examples of him seemingly changing his mind, but like Adam and Eve in the garden. The intent was for them to live forever, but then they sinned, and then things changed, which we could say that God changed his mind, but in reality, I'm sure God knew all along that they were going to sin.
Yeah. In a way, their sin is what got the ball rolling for all this history, and for Egypt, for Jacob and Esau, and Israel, and Jacob becoming Israel, then the 12 nations of Israel, and the history leading all the way up to Christ being the Redeemer of us all sinners.
Yeah.
To me, it just seems like a roundabout way for God to go from the Garden of Eden back to Revelation, and essentially another Garden of Eden.
Yeah. And all along, God knew that, and God has had this planned all along. Even though sometimes it seems that God changes his mind, but all along, God had this all mapped out.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe, was it so that we could, um, so that we could, uh, experience sin and know what it is, so that we could know right from wrong, so that we were better equipped for when Revelation comes and the new earth?
Yeah, it would. I'd have to agree with you on that. Yeah, that would make a lot of sense.
Just what Blackie think about that?
I don't know. She's in the other room. She's probably just mad because she's not getting attention.
Okay, so the next one is Esau comes to get a blessing from Isaac. So it's like 10 after 2. Did you want to continue? Because I got like uh, 10 more slides to go through.
I'm gonna say let's save it for next week because we gotta keep in mind we got people watching and they might start losing interest after a period of time.
Yeah,
And I think that would be a good pausing point. And if next week's a short
yeah,
study, then so be it.
yeah. Because that's what I thought. Because this is where Esau comes back with his game to get his blessing. So that's why I was thinking this would be a good place to stop.
Yeah. So we can go and stop here and continue on. That gives me another 2 weeks to get Johnny's put together, which I got started on it, but I haven't really started looking into the chapter too much. Of just putting everything in PowerPoint and going and putting everything in place. So yeah, this would be a good pausing point.
Yeah, okay. Wait. Oh, how do I get that big one on me off of there?
I'm not sure. So, well, if you want, we can go ahead and close out in prayer, and then I can go ahead and get this recording stopped so I can get it posted out there.
Okay. You want to close us in prayer then?
Sure. Dear Lord, once again, we just thank you. Just study your word, Lord. And Lord, how there's so much that you do that we don't understand. That, Lord, that sometimes we get a little agitated because the way you do things just doesn't seem to make a lot of sense, Lord. And that we see in the Bible that in the Old Testament that a lot of stuff that we see today has already happened in the past with your weird sense of humor, Lord. But we understand that even though we may not understand, and a lot of times the only reason we're really mad at you is because we don't see the full picture and you won't allow us to see the full picture till the day comes. But we do thank you, Lord, that you do allow us to see what you allow us to see, Lord, and that you continue to let us know that you do love us, Lord, and that when we do try to hide things from you, Lord, that not only do you know what we did, but a lot of times you bring it out to the light so that we have to confront it, and it just makes us stronger, Lord. So, Lord, once again, I thank you for everything that you have done and everything that you will do. In Jesus' mighty name, amen.
Amen.